Hi, this is Rabbi Rami Goldberg, and welcome to Biblical Money, powered by Israel 365, where we take a deep dive into how people of faith enhance their business by staying true to their biblical principles. We interview leading CEOs, executives, and entrepreneurs to capture their wisdom to help us live our most fulfilled and faithful lives. Please like and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date and informed. Hello, and welcome to Biblical Money. I am Rabbi Rami Goldberg, your host, and we have the opportunity over here to have Josh Rothstein with us, who is a candy manufacturer, right? I mean, a real live Willy Wonka, I don't know manufacturer, but has a candy business, a real live Willy Wonka in the flesh over here. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes to speak to Josh about Bible and business and faith and finance. And I'd love to get some of your perspectives on, how you make it all work and how you stay true to your faith, and some of the challenges that you've had within your business. So why don't you go ahead, start by telling us a little bit about the business that you're in, and we'll take it from there.
Sure. Well, we're candy distributors. We're based outside of Dallas, and we buy from manufacturers and sell to retailers and stores in the mall, airports, soda retail stores, the places where you can go and buy hundreds of different kinds of glass bottle sodas. So those are our customers, and my role is purchasing and sales. So I meet with vendors and customers and help support our teams that do the day-to-day work. So that's me.
Okay, and you have a team of people underneath you?
Right, so I manage the sales team, and we also have a purchasing team. People doing the day-to-day legwork, and I'm trying to support them and work with the larger customers and make sure they have what they need to be successful.
How did you get into candy? I think as a kid, we all saw Willy Wonka, and we saw that first scene where they're running through the candy store, and we're like, that's going to be me, and I'm going to be pulling candy out of everywhere. And you are actually living the dream over here as the candy man.
It's a funny story. My father's father was in the deli business. He was a distributor to Jewish-style delis in Cleveland and later in LA, and they decided to move to Dallas, but realized it was not a good plan to sell to Jewish delis in 1966 in Dallas. You'd go hungry pretty quick. So they had always sold a little bit of candy and grew on that business. So it's sort of a classic story. He would go in the mornings and take orders. In the afternoons, he would make deliveries on those orders. And we grew the business from there, from 20, 30, 40 items that were literally in his garage. Now we have a warehouse and employees, a website, etc. So that's pretty neat. It turned out that my father married the daughter of my mother, the daughter of a dentist. Sort of a symbiotic relationship there. And I guess I grew up with candy, and Dad would bring samples home and things that he had gotten that day. I didn't realize that was at all unusual until I guess I got to college and realized, hey, this is not how everybody lives.
Right. The rest of us father came home with a briefcase, and not as exciting. My father for a while actually sold ladies' handbags, and that was so my mother really liked it when he was doing that. So she would always have the latest fashion at that point, and he was selling to Macy's. So how many employees do you have at this point?
We have about 120.
Oh, wow. Okay. It's a pretty serious operation. Confined mostly to Texas, or you guys get outside of Texas as well?
Well, our warehouse is in Dallas, and we ship all over the U.S. and we ship overseas as well. So that's a nice thing about being in Texas. We're sort of in the center of the country.
A lot of times people don't think of it because it's further south, but you're close to the ports and you can get out. I mean, Dallas is what, how far are the ports from you guys?
The port is 250 miles, so an easy day's drive. But on the freight lines, we can ship to Miami, Chicago, and LA all in 2 days. So that makes it pretty convenient.
And logistics, that's a different department?
It is. I have two brothers in the business, and one of them is really more focused on logistics. But that's a really important part of our business as well.
Right. So interesting, when you get people who have family businesses, what kind of challenges do we have? Biblically, brothers don't always get along. I mean, we have many examples where it doesn't work out, and I guess if someone does something wrong, you guys throw them in a pit and sell them to some Ishmaelites down to Egypt. But how does that work out as far as your family dynamic?
Well, fortunately, we haven't gotten to the pit part of our relationship. It's good. It's important, and like any long-term relationship, there's things that are important to me that aren't important to one of the others, and vice versa. And so you have to figure out a way to get along. We have to respect each other, and we have to some extent have our own separate things that we're responsible for. But on anything important, we have to decide together. So we do work on that. I'm in the business with my parents, and sister-in-law and my wife also work in the business part-time. So a big group of us, but we work together really well almost always.
Right, right. Except that it spills over, right? When you get home and the conversations continue, which can sometimes be a good thing. I worked with my wife actually for a number of years, and people would ask me all the time, "How do you do it? How do you work with your wife?" And I was just like, "Well, this is the person that I married, and I'm happily married, and it's about communication." So, are you in the same department, or you guys are in two different departments?
We have two brothers, and we all sort of have our own areas, but we overlap plenty, and we try to be business partners together, right? And it works pretty well. And sometimes we have to sit down and argue it out and figure out whose opinion is the better one or whose approach is the right way to go. But we try to sort of run things by consensus. We don't really take a vote where someone's the winner and loser. You got to figure out a way to make it all work. Yeah, it usually doesn't cause a problem. We're all agreeing on what we're doing big picture, and we're headed in the same direction. So with that, like your wife, I'm sure, right? You agree on what you're doing, and maybe you disagree on how to get there, but ultimately you figure that the other people have the best interest at heart, and sometimes you have a better vision, and sometimes you got to push for your way.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things business-wise is to understand where you're going. So tell me a little bit about, as far as how faith has impacted your business approach. Are there things that you do differently as a result of your faith as a Jew, and how you treat customers, how you treat vendors? Are there things that come to mind?
It's a good question. For me, I'm obviously Jewish besides my name. I look Jewish, and it's an important part of who I am. My kids go to obviously Jewish schools, so people know that about me, and I have to remember that. I think I'd like to treat people in a great way, but I feel it's an additional responsibility and an additional opportunity. There could be people that never really worked with a Jew. We certainly have employees that have never worked with somebody that was, obviously Jewish before, and sometimes they look at me and sometimes they have questions for me, and it's a neat opportunity to interact with them. Occasionally, sometimes what would seem at first glance to be the needs of the business and my personal needs conflict. At a trade show recently, we were in a city that did not have any kosher food, and it was necessary to entertain customers. So I had to figure out how to balance those two things, and I had to think about what was important to me and what was important to my relationship with customers, and came up with a compromise. And of course I spoke with my personal rabbi as well to get his input. For me, the decision was go to dinner with everybody, participate in the discussion, and I had a drink, a water or perhaps whiskey, and that's kind of how I was able to balance things, and ate when I got back to my room. But it was a thoughtful thing I had to do, and a planful thing. It didn't, if I was starving, it would have been really tempting to eat what was there. But as you can see, I'm not going to waste away, and I knew what was coming, so I was able to prepare for that as well.
Right. I think a lot of times when it comes to spiritual development, we have a phrase that the rabbis teach us, that there's no holiness without preparation. And whether that's high holy days or whether that's daily prayer, or that's going into an environment which might not be our ideal environment, but we have to go in with a sense of preparation for this, because we can plan for as much as we can plan, and then hopefully things go the way that we intend, but to make sure to plan for those moments, so you do have that opportunity to sanctify God's name within the business and within our conduct. This was a little bit of like you had to figure out a solution to a problem, but have you had situations where something within the business conflicted with a certain morality that you held to be true within your business, that you were like, oh, I can't do this because of my faith? Or do you have any examples along that line?
Nothing comes to mind. I guess one thing that comes up is Passover is really problematic for people in the food business. In an ideal world, we would shut down our business for all of Passover. But that's not.
And the reason is let me explain to our listeners, because on Passover, as Jews, we don't hold on to any leavened bread, any types of breads, and within candy, you have a fair amount of baked goods that are made from wheat, and so that's something where that certainly becomes a challenge. So you'd like to close down for Passover and it not be a challenge, and so how do you deal with that?
So ideally, we'd like to close down, lock the doors, and open up after, but it's just not possible in our business. So we have to come up with a solution where we sell the business to a non-Jew, and I myself don't work in the business during that time, and spend the time with my family and get a chance to learn a little bit extra. during that time. But it was a progression for me personally. But I think I wasn't aware of all the intricacies, and once I was, it's not. The answer was obvious, but not simple. I was able to make that work. It's not so comfortable, and a lot of people don't understand why you can't be reached at all for a week. Even on vacation, people take their phones, and I'm saying no, but I won't even answer my phone. So not comfortable, but it had to be. It was the right thing for me. It's something I had to do.
That's amazing. You growing up, you were from what I understand, did you grow up in a religious, faithful home, or it was less traditional?
It was less traditional. We always felt a strong connection, but I wouldn't say that I was religiously observant. Aware of the holidays, but maybe not all the particulars. So that's relatively.
So what was
recent.
that transition like for you, and at what point in your life were you like, okay, God has spoken to me, or has guided me, or set me in a certain direction?
Yeah, I mean, as I probably as I worked previously, I had real jobs before this one, and as I came into the business, I knew that I was going to observe Shabbos, and my job interview was at my dining room table with my parents, and we sat down and we talked about like how that would look and how that would, if I got an urgent call Friday afternoon, that would be fine, but it was Friday evening, I wasn't able to take it, and how that would work, and then over time, as I learned more and I could apply that here, I was able to do a little bit more. As an example, there's certain days where maybe it's possible to work, but not ideal, such as the fast on Tisha B'Av.
That's the ninth day of the month of Av, which comes out usually comes out during the summer, is a national day of mourning, and it's, for the most part, we as Jews, we sit on the floor and we cry about the destruction of the temple, and so it's not prohibited to work necessarily, but it's not necessarily recommended. So
right. So I was able, over time, to realize that was something that was important to me. It seems hard to properly mourn if you're answering the calls and sending emails and that sort of thing. So for me, I was able to, make the time to take off from work, and sort of adjust my schedule in that way. Another interesting thing that came up. My family owns 100% of the business, but we had to, and advice from our lawyers, we had to make an arrangement that if one of us was unable to work in the business, if we died or if we wanted to sell, I decided I'm going to leave the business for whatever reason. My brothers would buy the business, but in doing so, if they didn't have the money to do that, they might pay me in time. Well, there's a challenge because in American law, I couldn't give them a loan without charging them interest. But in Jewish law, I'm not allowed to charge them interest. So we had a conflict, and it's not an obvious thing. So I was able to work with a rabbinic scholar, and he wrote, it's called a heter iska. It's a business agreement where we're in business together, and it's set up in a way that even though it meets the criteria of secular law of paying interest, in Jewish law, it's considered an investment that we're going in together. So that would meet both the obligations of secular law and Jewish law. That was a little bit difficult, but it was something we were able to do, and keeps me out of trouble with the tax man and also the important man upstairs. And the rest of my family as well. We all signed it, so we're all a party to it.
Right. So it's amazing that you inculcated Jewish law into your business, and always kind of thinking, well, God is also part of this business. One of the challenges that I find is that there's this bifurcation between people doing something within their business and then coming home and and living by their biblical values, and rather than it being being natural, and I think we need to expand those values from the home, from the synagogue out into our businesses, and that's amazing. One of the challenges I know that comes up often is employment law and employees, and how do you balance fair treating your employees fairly, with trying to make a profit, with sometimes you have to fire somebody that, so that I know was always one of the most challenging things as a business owner. So curious how you guys dealt with that, and what kinds of challenges come up in that regard.
Sure. Well, I mean, one thing we have to do, we mentioned earlier, you have to be clear about what you're doing, what your goals are, and how you're going to get there. And then you have to, find good people. That's not easy. But once you hire them, sometimes you realize then, and they realize that they're not the right fit. So part of it's just treating people in a nice way. Sometimes it's a matter of coaching and telling them, hey, this is what we need from you. If these are things you think you can do, let's work on them. If not, then maybe we need to help you find another place where it's more suitable for you. And I mean, I don't think we've ever sort of walked up to somebody who felt they were doing a good job and let them go. It was always a matter of, hey, here's what we need and here's what we expect, and let's help you get there. And if they can't get there by the time we have to separate, then they already know that things weren't working well for them. It's never a comfortable thing, and I'll say that, if I lost a deal or a customer had to close down or stop using us for some reason, I didn't lose sleep about that. But when we had to fire somebody, those are nights I did lose sleep about. And it's certainly nobody's favorite thing. I remember there was somebody who we worked closely with, and it was an important time in his life, but he couldn't work at Redstone anymore, and it wasn't the kind of thing where we could drag it out over time. So that was a really hard conversation. I know he had a big day coming, but we had to fire him then. And he asked me how he's going to tell his family, and I said, I'm really sorry, but I have a family too, and we have other employees, and we can't risk the good of the business for all these other 50 or 100 employees because of one person who's misusing company assets. So we have to terminate right now. So not an easy conversation, but if you're coming from the right place, then that's okay. There's another person who he was in bad health, and we kept him on and made arrangements for him to do little parts of his job as he was able to, as he was, we didn't know at the time, but he was dying, and he was in his last few months, and I don't think we quite realized, I'm not sure he did either, but we made it so that he could keep his health insurance while he had significant bills, and continue working and contributing while he was able to only sporadically. So felt pretty good about that. I guess at the end of our days, God is going to ask us, were we honest? Our first question is going to be, were we honest with weights and measures? So we interpret that to mean business. Were we fair? So if you keep that in mind, then everything is pretty simple. I mean, you know where you got to be.
I think that's it's always challenging to see the business and as one entity and the people that are there, and as the man at the top. A lot of times people don't see all the different things that go into that management, into making sure that this person doesn't damage the business, doesn't hurt other people, and the kindness that goes into business along the way. I'm a big proponent, and this is something Rabbi Daniel Lapin, who is really a role model for me, and I don't know if you had a chance to read his Business Secrets of the Bible, and I don't make any money from this advertising plug, but really talks about the nobility of business, and how when you have 100 employees, 120 employees, they go home to families, and that means you have 400 or 500 people on a nightly basis that are being fed based on the efforts of I'm sure in the industry, a relatively small candy business, but you have 500 people, and those people then go ahead and pay ripples and ripples of other people. So it's a really major impact, and that not everyone realizes all the kind of care and concern that people have for their employees, that management has, they sometimes only see the results.
For sure. Absolutely. And it's important to remember also, I'm the same mouth where I'm using to, praise employees or give them feedback to help them grow is the same mouth that praises God. And it's not that I'm a Jew when I'm in synagogue and at home, but a different person here. It's the same thing. I'm the same guy.
Yeah, no, it definitely. And so, when you think of, let's say, let's talk about like legacy and impact. Like, what are the things that you look at to judge the performance of your business beyond the financial? Obviously, it's a good year if you've made lots of money. But what are some of the other kind of criteria that you guys look at?
One of them is that we have a number we have a few hundred different people that sell us products and also services, and having good relationships with them, and paying on them on time and treating them in a good way. That's really important. Of course, we can look at employees, and at the end of the day, sometimes people criticize candy and sugar, and maybe it's not that good for you, but it's a retreat. It's a little moment when you can have the very best in the world, right? Not every year can we go on a great vacation or buy amazing jewelry, but every day or two you can have a great piece of candy or a soda, and you can step away from the world and get a taste of your childhood or something like that. It's a really neat opportunity, and I'm proud that we're doing that we're able to help with that.
Do you get a lot of pushback as far as the candy industry?
I know the candy industry itself is sort of organizing to make sure everybody understands that we're an everyday treat, but not a 10-time-a-day treat. That's clearly not in anybody's best health, and we want our customers to hang around for a long time. But there is some concern, and we can also make some adjustments. We have sugar-free candy. We have candy that's a little bit better for you, organic. So for people that need that, we certainly have, or want that, we have those options as well.
Right. No, it's definitely definitely interesting. All the food science that goes into that, and I definitely have my share of sweet tooth from time to time. Try to keep it limited, as you said, just to more limited times. But so let's talk about, you've had a great year. God has blessed you. You now have had. How do you look at philanthropy, giving? What are things that you're passionate about, and they get you excited? Yeah,
for us, it's not if you have a great year. Our approach, my wife and I, our approach is that when you have money, it's from God. This is what God gives you to accomplish your goal in the world. But for us, the first 10 or 20% is not ours. We're the stewards, and it's our job to make sure it goes to the right place. But we don't say that it's our money and we're giving some away. It wasn't ours to begin with. God is entrusting us to do the right thing. And by the way, if you do the right thing, God's going to give you more to do with, right? If you have an investment advisor, you wouldn't give him everything up front. You give him a little bit, and if he does well, you give him more. And so that's our approach in terms of where we give. It's we believe in education, and our kids are young. They're not quite so young anymore, but we've always tried to support the Jewish day schools. My wife is very involved in the food pantry. It seems like that's a basic need. If somebody needs food, really nothing else in their life is important. They have to do that. So we've found a few different charities and ways to help in that way. So we're excited about that, and we're excited about Israel and to support Israel. There's lots of incredible things that are going on in Israel, but now Israel needs different things during a difficult time, and we look for different ways to support Israel as well. Israel 365, of course, but other organizations as well.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an interesting time and within Israel, and you're also part of the One Jewish State board, and that's a pretty big deal to fight for Judea and Samaria, to the entirety of God's land, and that is the next step. Unfortunately, we know from history, Jewish people have moved around to many different places. Texas is the other Lone Star State, as we like to talk about it, and so, but certainly Israel is that. We do share that bond between us. And you said children's wise. What do you have as far as your children?
I have 3 daughters, 2 in high school, and 1 just got back from seminary, and she's in college.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, wonderful. So marriageable age. So you could start sending, if someone's got a nice boy, they can send it over to Josh when. Wonderful.
Well, first I have to see if they support Israel 365 and One Jewish State.
Yeah, there you go. Well,
that's on the criteria.
That's one of the criteria. Amazing. Do you have a favorite teaching that when you think of your when you think of, okay, should I make this decision or that decision? Do you have something that you go to that you say, okay, now I know that I'm making the right decision?
That's a good question. I wish I had a great quote I could share, but I've always felt that I'm the recipient of maybe 100 generations from Moses to myself of Jewish identity, and I thought I always think, well, if it was in the newspaper and if descendants were and ancestors were reading this, would they agree with what I did? Would I look like I was a fool or I was a hothead or something like that? And if I can think that my grandfather who started the business, no longer alive, but if he would be proud of what I'm doing and my grandkids would be proud of what I'm doing, then I'm probably doing the right thing.
Right. So seeing that continuity, that legacy, and knowing there's a great teaching. And we kind of started with throwing your brothers and you throwing each other in the pit. That what happens when Reuben came back to the pit and he sees Joseph wasn't there, there's a teaching that the rabbis teach that had he known what was going to be written about him, he would have picked Joseph up out of the pit, and he would have carried him on his shoulders back to Jacob, and the idea is that that we should recognize that right now there is another section of the Bible that's being written, and it's being written about us, and it's being written about our actions, and so that it's kind of the rabbis are hinting to that fact that we should go ahead, we should be acting just as in a way to recognize that even if our forefathers didn't recognize at the time, that we should recognize that we should be doing the right thing. We should be doing the right thing because it's the right thing. But then, additionally, it could be that something will be written about us, and we want that all to be positive.
For sure, it's very important. And I mean, the truth is, it's very real to me. I meet people quite often, or work with people that work with my grandfather, and my kids are interested in the business, and they get to meet some of our customers and vendors, and eventually I won't be around. They'll have a conversation, and they'll either say, "Wow, your father was really a piece of work," or "Yeah, we've always enjoyed working with you," and so that's something we all have to live up to.
And it's just good business practice. I mean, that's what it is. You treat people with kindness and respect, and ultimately, you give them more than they expect, and you expect less than they give you, and ultimately, that's how you build a business. Not always the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law, and making sure that that you act correctly. Wonderful. So let's we'll start wrapping up. I always like to wrap up with a couple of rapid fire questions. Favorite place to visit outside of your hometown?
I really love to go to Israel. It's been far too long.
And when was the last time you were in Israel?
I'm embarrassed to tell you it was 1993, so it's been a few years.
1993. Oh my gosh! Get on a plane. You won't recognize the
I know.
place.
You know what? I tried to keep canceling flights, so it's not entirely my fault, but we got to work on that.
Wonderful. So we'll get you here in short order. A book recommendation, something that that speaks to you, speaks to your heart, that that you might go to give you that extra burst of inspiration.
It sounds silly, but One Jewish State. I just finished that, and really it's a reminder that what we're doing now is given to us by God, and that's how we have to focus our lives. It's, I suppose, not a business book, but Ambassador Friedman shares a lot of things that can apply to our life even now.
Amazing. And any business books that you recommend?
I don't have anything off the top of my head. I do like to read a lot. I think From Good to Great is probably the best book I've read.
Jim Collins.
Yeah. Talking about the difference between an average business and a really amazing business.
Right. Now, a lot of it comes down to leadership, and he talks about different levels of leadership. So one thing which I think it's an amazing idea, and one of my rabbis actually wrote about Moses' leadership and kind of compared and took the 5 levels of leadership from Jim Collins. And one amazing thing, and I always like this teaching, is that there's hundreds of times throughout the Bible, it says, the verse says, and God said to Moses, saying. He says in a demanding way, in a way that he's commanding Moses. There's one time in the entire Bible that the order is reversed, and Moses said to God, saying, that he demands something of God. It's pretty audacious. So I love this teaching because it's and when is that? It's when it comes to the leadership of Joshua, when it comes to the appointment of the next generation. Because the whole point is, it was never about Moses. It was always about the Jewish people. So if it's about the Jewish people, then it doesn't matter if I'm leading or someone else is leading, as long as that person is the best leader for the time. Let me pass it on. So here he's saying, God, I need you to put the next person in place to take the Jewish people into the land of Israel. And so I think that's always something, and a humility to know when your time and you're finished with this particular project.
For sure, and we'll remember that Moses didn't want the job in the first place, right? He spent 3 days arguing with God about taking the job. I guess he got it anyway. God won that argument, but pretty amazing. Rabbi Sachs also has an amazing book on leadership. He takes it through the different sections of the Bible and talks about how leadership happens in each of those sections. Very clear and easy to understand, even for somebody with no background.
Amazing. So that's something I'll take a look. And last question, favorite book of the Bible?
I'm interested in Deuteronomy. I like the summary. I like the action. It's not the theory. It's now here's what you got to go do. You're about to enter the land, and here's your marching instructions, so to speak.
Yeah, that's the whole book of Deuteronomy is really about nation building, and so you have all that. So, Josh, thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Appreciate all that you continue to do for Israel 365, Keep God's Land, for One Jewish State, and for the Jewish community of Dallas, and just being a mensch in the workforce, and being somebody who's a role model, and your children and grandchildren, God willing, should get a lot of pride in the example that you set for them and within the business, and God should continue to bless the business, that you are able to support amazing endeavors and support the hundreds of people that eat on a nightly basis just based on your business. So, amazing work.
Amen. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity, and glad to participate however I can.
Thank you.